City of Stevens Point Police and Fire Commission meeting, recorded Tuesday, May 5, 2020.
I have 2 o'clock on May 5th, and I'm going to ask Leanne to please call the roll.
Carlson?
Not there, but here.
Kirschling?
Here.
Moore?
Here.
Ostrowski?
Here.
Westcott?
Present. Thank you. As commissioners know, the administrative policies and procedures of the Police and Fire Commission require each May the commission elects the president, secretary, and appoints liaisons for the next one-year term. That term, of course, is May of 2020 through May of 2021. Let's begin with nominations for the election of the commission president for the next term.
I will nominate Gary Westcott to continue as president of the Police and Fire Commission.
I will second that nomination.
Are there other nominations? If not, all in favor of returning Commissioner Westcott as the commission president, please say aye.
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 Aye. Say no. We also have in front of us today the election of a commission secretary. I would like to nominate Commissioner Robert Ostrowski for another term as commission secretary. Bob has done an exemplary job and even has had to fill in for me on occasion. I would like to nominate Commissioner Ostrowski for a second term.
Kirschling second that.
Are there any other nominations for secretary for the Police and Fire Commission? If not, you're voting to affirm the election of Commissioner Ostrowski as the Commission Secretary. Please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We'll say no. Motion carries. I might note, by the way, before I continue here, that Commissioner Ostrowski was just reappointed to the Police and Fire Commission by the mayor, and his appointment was recently confirmed by the Common Council. Congratulations, Bob. You've got another 5 years of this ahead of you. We would also like to point out that Alderperson Mary Kneebone was nominated by Mayor Wiesa to continue serving as the liaison from the Common Council to the Police and Fire Commission, and her appointment was confirmed too by the Common Council, so congratulations to Alderperson Kneebone. As far as the appointment of liaisons, what I'm going to do in the interim is just continue to ask Commissioner Kirschling to continue temporarily, and Commissioner Moore in police. We're going to has somebody else joined us here?
Yep.
Assistant Chief Gemza did, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Hi, Joe. I'm going to ask that you two continue to serve. I want commissioners to be thinking about a restructure for the liaisons as to perhaps multiple commissioners serving at various levels within those divisions, and we can discuss it more at a future meeting. But for the time being, Commissioner Moore, if you'd continue with police, Commissioner Kirschling at fire, and then the rest of you commissioners will be giving some thought to additional duties and responsibilities. I have some ideas. I will share them with you in the near future. With that said, let's move to item 3. We have a number of minutes, commissioners, in front of us here today that do require some action. We can take one motion to approve all of them, but before we do that, let me just individually roll through them. Are there any editorial questions or comments for Leanne, who does a superior job of taking care of this material here for the March 3rd minutes that are in front of us here? Okay, the March 17th minutes, any questions or comments? Those, of course, came from Dean. April 10, 21st of April. And hearing none, April 24th. If there are no amendments, I will entertain one motion to approve Leanne, are you okay with that? Will one motion be enough for all of us?
Yes.
Okay. I'll entertain one motion to approve the minutes from March 3rd, March 17th, April 10th, April 21st, and April 24th.
So moved.
I'll second. Kirschling.
Commissioner Carlson, seconded by Commissioner Kirschling to approve. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries. Commissioners, we have bills in front of us from March and of April. Let me get a new screen up here. Let's begin with the March bills. Are there any questions? Bob, I know you tend to like to lead this discussion. You're in the room. Do you have anything in the March for fire or police that you wish to highlight or point out for us?
Well, my only, for fire or ambulance, I did have on the police. I was just wondering that on the police, the 20,275.04, the record system management, is that a 1-year payment or is that a monthly? Is that,
That's a 1-year payment that comes through for our records management system.
that is a monthly payment?
Reoccurring, yes.
Okay.
All right. Are there any other questions from any commissioners on the bills from police, fire, or EMS for the month of March?
No, sir.
All right. Shall we move then to the month of April? I've got that up on the screen here. I did not have any in April either as I rolled through these. I'm starting to recognize most of these on an annualized expense here. Are there any questions on the April bills, Commissioners?
I have one for Chief Finn here. When they say gas and electric, is that for both stations or is that for a station?
It's gonna say,
Like it lists $1,410. Is that gas and electric for both stations or is that one?
I'm assuming it's both stations, but I'm not 100% sure.
It's both. Okay. All righty. That was my only question.
Chief Finn, would you like me to address that with the budget?
Sure.
So the answer to that is they are together. So when you see that in the budget, Commissioner Ostrowski, you will notice that on the bills that is an annual. We have that set aside annually, but that's for both stations together.
Okay, that was what I was hoping.
All right, and that sounded a lot like Assistant Chief Moody. Was that correct?
That is correct.
All right. All right. I will entertain. Are there any other questions for the bills from the month of March or April? If not, I'll entertain one motion that would approve both bills.
I would make such a motion to approve them all as submitted.
And I will second that. We have a motion and seconded to approve the bills for March and April. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. The biggie on our agenda here today is a continuation of a discussion that has been going on both at the commission level and in the community for some time. I have asked both Chief Finn, Chief Gemza, Assistant Chief Moody, Assistant Chief Zenner, and others to provide a comprehensive overview of the COVID-19 planning and preparation. I know many of you are aware of all of the work that has been going on behind the scenes from our fire, EMS, and protective services. We took action recently, as commissioners remember, on 2 memorandums of understanding important to the fire service and the hiring of 3 firefighters, soon to be paramedics, as part of this emergency. But this is an ongoing issue in our country, ongoing issue in our world. And I think maybe to kick it off, I think all of you are aware that there are some new rather alarming projections that were released yesterday by Johns Hopkins. Now, projections are projections, but we need to at least be mindful that most of the science on this seems to guide us in the direction that it will be with our society for a while. So with that said, Chief Finn, I'm going to ask you to kick it off. If you get just a little bit closer to the telephone, I would appreciate it. And I will let you start the overview, and then we'll, Joe, JB, Tom, I want you to jump in and participate at will. You don't need to wait to be called upon. Bob, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. As you all know, the last 10 weeks, we've been, the best way I can explain it is planning for a blizzard and hoping for snowflakes. We are always in communication with the police department. Our policies and procedures are always based on science, and we rely on the CDC for all of our decisions that we make in public safety. I'm going to speak very generally, and then Chief Gemza, who's put in a Herculean effort into this, to make sure that all first responders, not only in the city but the county, had the proper PPE and were fit tested, and everybody was, sorry, Jack, and everyone was protected when they went into someone's house or on a run. Real fast, I know the National Guard will be here on Monday and Tuesday of next week at the Health and Human Services, and they want to test 500 people. There's going to be some pre-screening done, and if I'm wrong, Chief Gemza, please correct me. There's going to be, you do not need doctor's referral, but there's going to be pre-screening, and there's a list of 10 symptoms. If you answer yes to one of them symptoms, you will be tested. If you get tested, you're going to be asked to self-isolate for 48 hours. I know the Department of Public Health has worked with Chief Gemza and also worked with the City Police Department for traffic. And I'll let Chief Gemza go over everything we've been doing the last couple of months and what we're planning. Chief Gemza?
Okay. So just a quick overview. Briefly, as of today, we have 7 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Portage County. We regularly or daily get a 201 form. That's an Incident Command System form with an update from the Portage County Department of Health. Gary Garski keeps us posted with how many people have been tested, how many confirmed cases in Portage County, along with the state of Wisconsin, and then the national. And then it's a quick, brief overview of what's been going on daily regarding COVID-19. So of the 7 confirmed cases, Stevens Point Fire Department has had no contacts with any of the 7 confirmed cases at this point. We continue to utilize our PPE. A change that happened roughly about 2 weeks ago, we switched over to every patient has a surgical mask, knowing that this virus can be transmitted in particulates. We wanted to make sure that if there was a source, we could stop it. And then secondly, all paramedics or anybody within contact of that patient will wear a surgical mask, whether or not they're confirmed COVID or suspected COVID or not. It's just the policy now of the department. On top of that, as the PPE, the gloves, which has always been a normal for us. Those are the bare bones minimum, ranging all the way up to N95 respirator with the gowns, shoe covers, and face shields, depending on how it all works. As you know, it is recommended by the CDC that anytime that there's a particular type of treatment for a respiratory issue, like a nebulized treatment for asthma or COPD, that they would wear an N95 and be fully gowned. And that's because of the transmission rate of this virus, along with the actual procedure that we're doing where it nebulizes into the air. Also, following the practice recommended through the CDC and the Department of Health, all codes or CPR, the whole crew will be in full PPE. We've also established a practice of utilizing our PPE, but also making sure that it can be reused when it can. All N95s are to be used up to 5 times unless soiled or have been through a nebulized treatment. And along with the face shields, luckily Portage County donated some to us, reusable ones that we can clean off, and we also have disposable ones. as far as the inventory of PPE goes, I know that's a hot topic. As of right now, we've been working with the Portage County Emergency Management, and weekly they ask us to update them with our supply list for the 7 days. So they're looking at an operational PPE unit of a 7-day type of request. So what do we think we would need for 7 days of operation? And we've been working with them to fill out those surveys weekly. We currently have our supply chain, and if stuff does trickle in occasionally. So we started ordering early on in the end of February, and at that point, we're being told 4 to 6 weeks. I have Lieutenant Armando Ramon and firefighter Shane Westfall who do a lot of that, and they've done a great job of just doing a moving and shaking of trying to get sales contacts and all kinds of stuff like that. We also weekly do an inventory, our own inventory, to find out how fast we're moving through our PPE to ensure that we can make our requests in a timely fashion. So that's it for the PPE. Does anybody have any questions about our personal protective equipment that we wear on the calls?
Joe, do you order your PPE through the state, or do you order it direct?
So that's a great question. Emergency management and the state, they do it two ways. They prefer that we order it directly from our people, but who we normally buy from. But they also recognize that that's a slow time coming. So anything to bridge the gap, the state and Portage County Emergency Management have been working to kind of bridge that gap until your supply can get there. So it's kind of a twofold process.
Are there other questions on personal protective equipment for Assistant Chief Gemza? If not, please continue, gentlemen.
All right. So I will move on to the work with Portage County I guess what we would do with ordering supplies and invoices and stuff like that. Obviously, knowing that a public health emergency has been declared, everything falls under FEMA forms and stuff like that. So we've been working with the Portage County, Jenny Josie with Portage County and her staff to ensure that the invoices and the descriptions of what we're ordering is whether it's just a normal operational period type of supply or if it's something directly related to COVID so that those can be tracked. They send us the invoices. We then write a brief description of what that's for, if it was for the use of COVID or if it was just normal use. And then to move on to more of the money or financial aspects of what's going on with COVID, Portage County did accept the CARES Act provider relief. With that comes a little bit of strings as far as report writing goes for ambulances. So the government wants to ensure that we're documenting things appropriately. So we did, Captain Zavara and firefighter paramedic Ben Molnar, who work on our reporting, we tweaked some of our reports to, not reports, but the buttons that we press on our patient care reports to ensure that we're following and that if the government has questions, we're tracking the appropriate PPE and those precautionary type of things. So those are a couple of the things that we've dealt with regarding the big ticket regarding reimbursement and the CARES Act and invoicing. Are there any questions about that?
I don't hear any, Joseph. Please continue.
Excellent. That either I've really nailed it here, or billing isn't that interesting, which I could agree with.
No, I think most of your reports, as are Bob Finn's and J.B. Moody's and police, are very comprehensive. You've gotten to know the commission over the years. You tend to do an excellent job of anticipating questions and answering them in advance. So please continue, sir.
Okay, so then as we move forward, we went into deconning our ambulances, and I'm not sure if we gave a full report on that, but we recently have been aerosolizing, disinfecting the back of our ambulances, the cabs of our fire trucks, and other apparatus. That we found that practice to work quite well. So really, when they transport any patient to the hospital, they will do their normal decontamination of the ambulance, where they wipe them them down and make sure that they're good on any other day. And then when they come back here, we have an aerosolized disinfectant process where it goes into a gun. They wear proper PPE and they disinfect through particulates in the back of the ambulance, the cab of the ambulances, the fire engines, and so on and so forth, based on need. And we found that to be a very effective route, time sensitive, also to be able to get those ambulances back in service. So that has been a really, really positive aspect of what we've been doing.
Has that extended the time, I would imagine, before an ambulance can be returned to service, or have we just become so proficient at it we turn over pretty quick anyway?
I would like to say that we're so proficient, but the regular decon is normally sufficient. This is just another layer of protection for the ambulance. So there's been no delays in getting ambulances out the door. It's just been adding extra layers. It's those extra levels of precaution, like our daily cleaning, and making sure that people, if they come to the building, that we use proper social distancing and hand sanitizing and stuff like that.
Good.
Okay, so then I wanted to just touch briefly about the community and the antibody testing that I'm sure that all of you guys are aware of. Ascension Medical Center has that capability of doing the IgG test, which is the antibody, the test that says, hey, you had it, you had COVID-19. And you possess the antibodies. After a lot of discussion, we know that first responders are available for that. Talked to the medical director, Dr. Clark, who I got to say has done a really nice job of working with us, with our people, and adding that extra level of medical advice for us. It was determined that Ascension is going to. They're offering the IgG test, which is the antibody test, but the level to do that, you would want to consult with your doctor first to find out if it's a viable option for you. So that's the other thing community-wide that we're moving forward on. Again, we're also continuing with our weekly teleconferences or webinars. One we do every Monday morning is with the long-term care facilities, which would be our nursing homes and CBRFs, community-based residential living spots. With those, we discuss the different needs, the trends with the hospitals, the ambulance services, and what those facilities are seeing, obviously knowing that those are our most vulnerable patients, and we want to make sure that they're taken care of. Those have been going well. We also participate in a weekly webinar with St. Michael's Hospital and Ascension, our local hospital, their emergency management, our Portage County Emergency Management, all the ambulance services, and we discuss any trends that the ERs are seeing, or if there's any needs or anything that need to be addressed. So that's one that we do enjoy discussing, and also we do the community discussion with the Department of Health Services weekly. So those are our regular ones on top of ones that we get sent on a normal basis regarding any kind of COVID-19 webinar that we've been seeing. Another thing, are there any questions so far?
Joe, I just got one.
Okay.
Since we think of ourselves as a area-wide ambulance service, are you in communication with Plover and Amherst that we're all following the same steps?
I've been in contact with Amherst Service Director John Pori and Tim Shiseski. We probably talk at least 2 to 3 times a week about the different things that are going on, because I think all services want to agree that we want to make good, sound decisions for our personnel and our patients, and we just kind of go back and forth about, hey, did you hear this? What do you think about that? Those types of discussions, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Maybe I'm gonna go ask it now, because you were just talking about the EMS portion of this. Tell folks in the community who would be watching or monitoring media. I have two questions here. How do we triage a call? I know we have the protective equipment on board, the EMS, the ambulances, the fire units. I know Assistant Chief Zenner can talk a little bit about they're in the squad cars. But talk us through the process of triaging so we have an idea what we're rolling up on.
So the comm center asks a series of questions prior to dispatching us, and as they dispatch us for anybody, they ask the questions: have you been sick? Do you have a fever? Do you have a sore throat? Are you having breathing problems? Have you been in areas of mass transmission? Those types of questions to find out if there's a possibility of COVID-19. So prior to them even showing up, they would get a positive or a negative response from the dispatch.
I think that's important. We all realize there is a protocol in place for that. Is there a protocol in place for a lot of this?
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
A little bit more. So as we've discussed with law enforcement and our engine companies and ambulance and first responder groups, is we're trying to limit the number of first responders, medics, anybody with the patient, any patient. So as we know, this is a communicably spread disease. It's particularly spread, and it's spread fairly easy. So the best way we can do that is limit the personnel. So what we've done is we're still sending the personnel. We're just not sending them into the scene. So in other words, we want, in the event of emergency, we want to make sure our resources are there. We just don't want to commit them to something if we don't need to. So the engine company will hold back, and when the ambulance steps in, they're all wearing their surgical masks to ensure that they're not spreading it. They're putting one on the patient, and they're asking the same questions that dispatch is asking to ensure that they're in the same ballpark. Then they'll radio back out to either law enforcement or to the engine company and say, we need your help, we don't need your help. We just don't want to release them until we know those things for sure.
Nice.
Yeah, well done. I think I'm going to hold on the rest of my questions until the overview is done. Please continue.
Okay. Well, I have just a little bit more because, with these times of social distancing and making sure, one thing that we've been trying to make sure we stay up on is our training. Because it's important that medics and firefighters stay sharp with the skills that we need them to do for emergencies. So we continued on with our training for firefighters. The guys have been doing a really nice job, and JB can attest to it regarding their firefighter basic training, in-house type of stuff developed between two stations, so that we can optimize their time with that. One thing we did on the EMS side is, believe it or not, when we talk about forging relationships, Dr. Lindsay Dressing from Stevens Point, University of Stevens Point, she heads up the pre-med class, and they always come over to our station at least once to twice a year, and we do like intubations and IVs and all sorts of different stuff with these students. Well, she's teaching a class on virology, the study of viruses, and she offered to do a Zoom presentation for all three crews on this. And I'll tell you what, it was really good, and you couldn't ask for better timing when you think about COVID-19 and the virus thing. And she did that for us, and it was very educational. Every single one of the medics that walked out of there were like, wow, that really did help me. So those are the types of things we've been up to with COVID-19. And so I can answer any questions you may have now.
If you have an immediate question for the assistant chief or fire chief, or maybe we can go to the next phase, maybe a quick overview, if my colleagues will permit it, from what's going on in police services. Assistant Chief Center?
Right. The one thing I was going to touch on, Chief Finette talked about the National Guard testing that's going to be taking place Monday and Tuesday. We're going to have 2 officers on overtime both days at that location assisting with traffic control, starting at 8 in the morning until 5. We've had some communications with Ray Shabilsky, basically some ideas of how that will look. We'll look forward to Friday. One of the concerns that we have is this is a first come, first serve, so there is some potential of, well, I guess we'll see what comes to be. But it looks like we're going to be having traffic that's going to be coming off of Double H onto Whiting, and we will channel it in that direction, and vehicles will exit on Whiting onto Water. So we will not have vehicles. They will actually have roadblocks up County Highway, actually, and we'll see if streets will be assisting on that. We're putting some roadblocks up, so depending on where those roadblocks are and how traffic flows on the scene at Health and Human Services will dictate where our personnel locate for traffic control. So that one will be a stay tuned.
The actual site is where there?
It will be in the back parking lot of Health and Human Services. Other than that, kind of touching on PPE, what we have currently at the police department, obviously masks, we've just received a donation from Cooper Dentistry that donated a large amount of KN95 masks. We were able to distribute some of those. We split those with Portage County Sheriff's Office. And prior to those masks coming here, Tim Cooper, the owner of the business, had already reached out to Plover PD and Plover Fire, so those entities were taken care of. But we were able to pass some of the masks on to Health and Human Service social workers, State Patrol personnel in Portage County. Because we were pretty good with KN95 and N95 masks. We also have some cloth masks that family members of officers had made. Where we are looking at, we will need to replenish will be surgical masks. We can use some of the KN95 masks for surgical masks, but ultimately what we use those for are for individuals that have been arrested when they are placed in our squads. A mask is placed on, so it's more of a preventative measure. But other than that, we're doing good on equipment. Within the police department operations, we continue to operate with modified shifts. We have our investigations bureau that I believe this is the first time in our history we've had an evening investigative bureau shift. Half of those personnel, including Lieutenant Cousseau, come in at 2:30, and then work till 10. Actually, what is that the shift you're working, Bob?
2 to 9:30.
2 to 9:30. That has worked out well for us in our patrol. We have a modified shift where a half hour before shift change, we have personnel prepared to leave, but they meet in separate rooms. The whole purpose of that is to limit contamination from shift to shift. Other than that, we our auxiliary unit has been suspended for further notice, which really has not been an impact because there's no special events taking place at this time. Our community service officers, that's our parking enforcement personnel, they have been furloughed until further notice. We obviously have parking enforcement taking place yet, but that is for patrol. And Lieutenant Jeremy Mueller has been the point of contact at the police department, and he keeps everybody up to speed on all the information coming out from Health and Human Services. The fire department has been an immense help keeping us up to speed on information, and he is also gathering statistics for FEMA when this whole process is complete. That's all I have.
I have a question for you, Tom.
Sure.
How many complaints or calls do you receive about large gatherings or gatherings that are taking place, birthday parties or whatever? Are you getting a lot of calls like that?
Yes, actually, and I put a check mark on I was going to bring that up. We have seen, actually, I can't recall the last call we have received referring to businesses that are essential or non-essential. That has pretty much sorted itself out. We have received and are receiving more and more calls dealing with social distancing or group gatherings And what we have operated under that is an abundance of common sense on how we're addressing those issues. And we, at this point, have been able to take care of that with voluntary compliance. One thing we have, and I've encouraged, and we've worked very closely with the fire department on, is birthday parades have become a big call for service. And it's been very successful, and I think in this day and age, if we can put a smile on a few people's faces, that's a pretty good deal.
Are there any immediate questions for Assistant Chief Zenner?
I'd just like to comment that I like the idea of using the common sense. I think the public will accept that much easier and much better and put weight behind it than how would I say, a stern system.
All right, question for all of you who have participated, our chiefs and assistant chiefs. We receive so much data. I alluded to the Johns Hopkins University projection, Joseph, Bob, JB, Tom to a certain degree. What are you hearing from state and federal officials? I mean, there's been so much talk about a second wave. Well, now they've kind of said, well, if social distancing may not be as folks are practicing that as well as they should be. So what are you hearing in the official pipeline for the duration of this? I think one of you said it best. I mean, it certainly is going to be a marathon and not a sprint. But what are you hearing through official circles? We can start with Bob Finn if you want.
I believe the governor's office put out a press release yesterday that they want to test up to 85,000 people per week. They want to test everyone in a nursing home. I just saw the press release. I have not seen anything. They have their Badger bounce back plan. According to that plan, I don't think we're ready for phase 1 yet, and I think that's what they're working towards with this testing, to get to phase 1 and to phase 2 eventually. That's what I've heard officially. The Johns Hopkins thing I have not seen yet today, but I
All
did.
right. Joseph, JB, Tom, anything you want to add to that?
I'd say from the police department aspect, really right now we're just following the Supreme Court, seeing how that end result may dictate our operation, essentially, and what we're responding to. So at this point, in the short term, that's where we're really putting our energy, paying attention to what is happening there, and what effect that may have moving forward.
Joe, what would you add?
I would add that I have no clearer answer to the length and time of this virus than I did 3 weeks ago. We get told stuff on a daily basis, and I think that we as citizens and good citizens have to continue to practice our social distancing and see how this works, because as you know, this is a 2-week window. Every day is 2 weeks back to see where we're at. And so I think patience is probably our biggest virtue at this point.
Well said. Bob, would you spend a moment and brief the commission, brief them up on your role in preparation for activation of the EOC if necessary? I know you put a lot of time and effort into that, and I want commissioners to be aware of it.
All right, the city's opened up a virtual EOC. We have a weekly meeting. We probably talk more than that. Probably a couple times a week. Jason from the airport's the EM. We report to him. Under the EOC, though, we signed an MOU with UWSP. Any police or fire that gets possibly exposed to COVID-19, they don't want to go home and expose their family until they can get checked out. We're allowed up to 18 persons in a dorm at one time. That took a couple weeks to draw up between the city attorneys, and Karina did a great job, the emergency manager from UWSP, to get us that. But it gives our guys some feeling of security that if something happens, that the city has their back and they don't have to go home. Right now, in the EOC, we're working on different plans, seeing what the Supreme Court says, and possibly what's the next phase of, excuse me, getting off this alternate schedules. Like Chief Gemza says, we get information every day. We get information at 10 o'clock in the morning, by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's changed. So, I mean, we're just going day by day, and we're gonna do the best practice that the CDC recommends to protect our people and the citizens of the city.
Bob, these people would be housed where, one of the dorms or something?
Yeah, we have a dorm, there's a dorm set up over there. Chief Moody or Chief Gems, do you remember the name of the dorm? Because I think it's Higher Hall, I'm not 100% sure. That was set up for 18 people.
Thank you.
Yes, that is correct, Chief.
Thank you.
How are the firefighter, paramedics, and police officers, from a personal point of view, how are they holding up? I mean, this is certainly a strain to a certain degree, certainly a very serious degree. They're on different shifts or alternating. Bob, how are the firefighter, paramedics doing? Everybody holding up okay?
I think everyone's holding up great. Everyone's doing a great job. They know the seriousness of this. They take the risk as being real. They protect themselves. They protect their families. They've been very professional through this whole thing. They've stepped up to the plate and helping with planning and getting supplies and training. I couldn't be more proud of the guys at the firehouse. And it's still a firehouse, so we still joke around and have a good time.
Tom, can you give the commission an assessment from law enforcement's point of view?
Yeah, we got a great group of lieutenants, obviously they're working on each shift. Lieutenant Cousseau in the room right now, overseeing his work group. They do an excellent job of keeping the officers informed and keep the atmosphere light. Actually, it's been very good.
Are there questions for any of the team that reported on COVID-19 from the commission?
I was just curious with Assistant Chief Gemza, did you say the masks are good for 5 uses before having to be re-sterilized or new ones to replace it?
Yeah, and I guess that's the quick answer. What we do is the medics will utilize the N95s up to 5 times. They're given a bag to put them in after each use. There's certain at-risk type of procedures that they do because of their working with patients, that if they perform that at-risk thing, then the N95 would then become obsolete no matter what use it was, and then they would replace it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chief, Assistant Chiefs, I think I speak for all my colleagues. We wish to commend all of the hard work and efforts that you're all doing. We are keenly aware of the long hours, long days, weekends, after hours that all of you and your staff are putting into this, and I want you to know the Commission is aware of it, and we are sincerely appreciative for everything you're doing for this wonderful community. I think my colleagues will agree with me on that.
Most definitely.
All right, thank you. I don't think we need any official action on that. Thank you for the update. It's going to continue to be a regular agenda item for us. Let's move to the next item on our agenda. Item number 6 is our fire chief's report, EMS report. Bob, where do you want to start?
All right.
You have the report in front of us. Where would you like to go first?
I'm going to start with COVID-19. No. Everyone has the report in front of you, but what's not mentioned in the report is that, if you remember about a year ago, Stevens Point Fire Department and Police Department signed an MOU to work together as with the fire investigation team. Well, I want to commend the team. In the last month, they have made 2 arrests for arson in the city. It's working with Fire Department investigators, Lieutenant Cuso and his detectives, DCI, ATF has been involved in helping us, and just goes to show when a team goes to work together what can happen. There has been a couple other fires that were accidental fires, but the police department's been out there with our investigators, and they should be commended for the hard work and efforts they put in on that. It's not easy to make an arrest on any arson case, let alone to make 2 in a month is pretty good. Also, I'd like to announce that when we hired, you made the motion to hire the 3 guys. I do have their start dates, one starting May 11th, one starting May 18th, and one starting June 1st. 1 or 2 of them might have their paramedic classes completed, and depending if the National Registry is allowing tests, they might be able to do that. But I'd be remiss if I didn't go out and thank Dr. Clark, our medical director, in getting these 3 guys hired. On the chief's website for the last 2 months, it's like, how are we gonna hire people, because you couldn't get the blood work, you couldn't get the pulmonary function test. Chief Gemza reached out to Dr. Clark, and even though these testing, Ascension had shut down these tests, he convinced them that this was essential personnel, and they opened up the facilities for our guys to complete these tests, and so now we're getting them hired. So I want a special thank you, it goes out to Dr. Clark for that. And through all this, we are looking at a new training program, software that is in capital budget, and that will go along with the classroom update. COVID-19 has pushed this project back probably 6 weeks, but we're still moving forward. We're trying to get a new training program, software, and getting our classroom updated. Our strategic plan is in its final draft form. Because of COVID-19, we have not been able to sit down and have the group that wrote it finalize it. And once we get it finalized, and we can meet as a group here or put on a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation to show you what it is, we'll just hold that, and then we'll keep you updated when we institute it. Other than that, I don't have anything else.
Chief, and where are we? I imagine we're a little bit on hold because of COVID-19, but where are we with working with the Department of Justice on that MOU we had signed earlier this year?
Because of COVID-19, the first class was canceled. It's pushed back to, I believe it's in October. It's 3 days in the first week of October, 2 days in the second week. Is that correct, Chief Moody? Something like that. I know it's been pushed back to October.
Chief, it's going to be the week of October 12th, and then it is going to be the following week, Tuesday and Wednesday. So it's going to be 1 full week, the week of the 12th of October, and then the following week, 2 days.
Good. Thank you, Chief Moody. Bob, you still have the floor.
And we were supposed to have the fire investigation conference in Point was canceled because of COVID-19. But also the PFFW state conference was supposed to be in Stevens Point. That was postponed. Now the PFFW state conference, that's the Professional Firefighters of Wisconsin Union, and WALT, which is a union management 2-day seminar, will be hosted in Point also in October now.
Okay. Who's studying the financial impacts on the city and the county budgets on this? I know this isn't really the jurisdiction of the commission, although our budgets for police, fire, and EMS are. I would imagine, Chief Finn, is that something the comptroller's office is working on? Anything you're aware of there?
I know they've been working on the financial impacts. I don't know if they have any solid numbers. I do know that there's a COVID-19 account for all expenditures because I believe they're going to get reimbursed through FEMA for that. So we have a separate account for that. But as far as the financial impact on the overall budget, I do not know. I know that the building department is still operating and giving out building permits, and the operating budget's due to new construction. So and construction wasn't shut down, so I'm not 100% sure, but I don't I don't see, I think the new tax dollars with new construction might be able to offset a little bit of the hit that the city took on fees and other things.
Yeah, I would think there's probably a couple of items you have that, of course, this is more of a county function, but as Bob and I have discussed, that 0.5% sales tax, but our EMS levy stands alone and is not part of that 0.5%, commissioners, as you all know. And of course, for the city, I think you have some impact of the room tax, as Bob just ran through a kind of a list of classes and things that have been canceled. Are there any questions for Chief Finn on his report? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to approve the fire chief's report, including the EMS report. If there are no questions, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Carlson. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Bob, and again, thank you for all your hard work. I'm keenly aware of how much you're putting into all of this, and thank you. Please accept my sincere gratitude. Assistant Chief Zenner, the next item on our is the police chief's report. Commissioners, I can give you a second to get the report in front of you on your screens. Tom, I have the May 7th report. What areas would you like to highlight for the commission, sir?
Yes, make sure in the packet, I mistakenly gave Leanne my April report that went out, and hopefully everyone got the May 7th report that I kicked out with it or afterwards. But we had a performance review that was submitted and a life-saving award that went out to Sergeant Ben Eitenbrook and Lead Officer Christy Arns. That was for a Narcan and a CPR that was performed on a drug overdose on, I'll just give a location of close to Arlington and Water Street. That was on April 10th. Individual was brought back, and EMS was able to take them to St. Michael's, where an individual was medically cleared shortly thereafter. Also to go with that, I believe it was a couple days, yes, April 8th, Lead Officer Austin Lee, he actually had two individuals in one day, two separate individuals that were administered Narcan. And to tie with that, last month, I know we didn't meet last month, and that was on the April 7th Chief's report. Officer Lee had an individual that he administered Narcan to, so he's actually had 3 individuals in 2-month time period that he has brought back, all on drug overdoses, whether that's a bad product, or I guess if you want to use that terminology, but certainly we are seeing an uptick. It seems to have slowed down. That was earlier in April, but we have received an uptick in drug overdoses, and that type of activity calls for service that we've been going to. Other than that, we had one interesting call. It was a Crime Stoppers tip that came in, a 17-year-old female from Wittenberg. This was tied into a retail theft out at Target. She had stolen on multiple occasions several infant outfits. We had over 40 infant outfits, countless diapers and bottles, 8 car seats, and 2 strollers. She was not a mother. She just apparently liked to have this equipment for her dolls, from what I understand. Is that correct, Lieutenant Cousteau? Okay. Staffing issues that we are seeing, we did have an officer recently resign, Officer David Rogers. He is taking a position in Wapaka County. We also had one of our records personnel resign, Missy Pitcher, who's taken a position at UWSP Protective Services. We are currently in the process of that hiring process now. I think we've closed our applications for the records personnel, and we are currently seeking applications for the officer position, which we also anticipate a retirement, I believe, in July. So we are looking at 2 officers short. It's not the most opportune time to go through that process, as we're looking at the area technical school, the academy, has been suspended, obviously, for COVID-19, but we've been advised that that will reopen and looking at that class to graduate in July. And we have reached out to the instructors there to encourage those individuals going through that academy to keep us in consideration, and that we will obviously look at them, even though they will not be certified at the point that this application process ends. So other than that, any questions in the packet?
Let me back up just a little bit, refresh my memory. I don't mean to put you on the spot here, Tom. When was Officer Rogers hired? He's a recent hire, isn't he?
We actually, you would have just saw a packet on him come through in January where he finished his 1.5 year probation period. So yes, he's a fairly new officer. He was hired, he was currently working in Shawano County, I believe, prior to coming to us.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Okay, first of all, I wanted to tell Tom and Leanne, whoever put the report together, I really liked the police report this month. It showed a lot of detail. It gave me a good feel for it rather than just seeing a number or something. Also, I'm curious, how much is one dose of Narcan? Maybe Joe or Tom or Bob, somebody, I'm just curious.
I'm going to refer to
Chief Gemza.
Chief Gemza.
Oh, I get it when they don't know that all. Are you, Commissioner Carlson, are you referring to the dose or the cost?
I'm curious what, Officer Lee in one day gave, administered it twice. I'm just curious for my own knowledge, how much does one dose or whatever it takes of Narcan cost?
So they come with 2 vials that are intranasal, and each one is, depending on the fluctuation in the cost, I would say you'd average around about $43 a dose.
Oh, that's fantastic. And then thank you very much, Joe. And then Tom, for you, we have had IB working a PM shift before, and I had mentioned this a few months back. Even after the COVID, my 2 cents, I'd love to see an IB shift working the PM. City this size, we should have people in IB working a PM shift. And then also for the rest of the commission and for FD and PD associates, we spend so much money on training officers or even clerical staff at both places, whether it's firefighters, police officers, and to lose them after this short a time, I really think we should, as a SOP, standard operating procedure, conduct exit interviews, either the commission or the administration of either the FD or PD. And I just wanted to throw that up and put it out there for any discussion or thoughts.
Commissioner Carlson?
Yep.
Sorry.
Go ahead,
The
Chief.
last couple people that left, I have conducted exit interviews, and it's nothing that we've, as a city or a fire department, have done. It's either I'm going home, that's where my family's from. It's this today's generation, they get the job and then they take it, and then when they want to go home, they go home. That's,
Yep.
I don't know of anybody that's left the fire department and come in and said, you know what, this place is run bad or the city's run bad. A couple people might have left with hard feelings, but I don't know if there's much we can do about it. But we do conduct I do conduct exit interviews with the guys that do leave.
I thank you. I'm glad you do. I think it's important, and also it gives us an idea for future hires too. I'm just looking for a better way, and I'm glad you're doing it already, Bob.
Commissioner Carlson, I conducted an exit interview with Officer Rogers, and that was a comment, obviously, with a better situation or schedule for family. There was some conversation concerning wages and lateral transfers. He came to us with prior time on. We do not offer a lateral transfer, and so wages was an issue with the position that he took. Other than that, you like the opportunities that we have at this department, the training that we offered. He did bring some prior experience as a fuel training officer, so those aspects did appeal to him, but it's a different generation where they chase the perks and the money. It's the loyalty we may have enjoyed in the past to a department that hired us is something of the past.
Yep. And for both of you, I was not trying to find fault or anything. I'm looking at a more recruitment and hiring process where we could do better to retain people so we don't have to, do the same old, same old.
All right, I'd add on to that point as a police department and to kind of drill this point home. We have recently lost, obviously, this officer to Waupaca County. We lost an officer to Sturgeon Bay Police Department. We had 3 that went to UWSP, one obviously as chief, but 2 other positions we have lost. We lost a couple positions to Plover. I could discuss knowing those situations. We do very good on paying officers initially. We're very competitive, but when it hits the 3-year to 5-year mark, we are not competitive when it's looking at wages. So that is something, a cold hard fact that we need to address in the future.
Okay, thank you.
I
Go ahead.
had a couple questions here. One is Ron, I had very similar thoughts to you. I love these reports. They were absolutely terrific. Sometimes I've left meetings with questions in my mind. This already, I had answers before I even came to the meeting, so I really liked that. Yeah. Second of all, is I was very happy to see that our mental health checks have sizably gone down, which I find is very weird, because we were up in the 80s and 90s just a few months ago, and now with all this, we're down to 33. I don't know if that means the community whole needs to be checked on, or if it's just we're getting a better handle on it. But I'd like to commend the department, whatever doing, it's working. My one question was, I see we had an axe deal with a weapon. I hope that wasn't being used on an officer.
It was not. It was a complaint. I believe that was a domestic disturbance. Don't quote me on that, but I know it was a disturbance, and an axe was displayed and advised as officers responded to the scene, but that was not in the suspect's hands upon our arrival.
And then my last question for you was, on a squad, for instance, how many Narcan, how many do we have in a squad? I mean, if they use 2, I don't imagine you carry 20 of them around, I don't think, not at those prices.
We have 2 doses in the squad, and actually, I don't believe any of those cases, 1 dose was sufficient. We, actually, one individual, I believe 3 doses were used.
Joe, you could probably answer this. How long is the Narcan good for that we can keep it in a squad?
2 years.
Well, that's a loaded question. Narcan is very susceptible to temperature changes, so the officers have to make sure that the medication is regulated. And then the other, if we went just by expiration dates, you're looking at usually between a 2 to 3 year shelf life.
Okay.
We have a protocol in place that officers need to check that out. Because of that temperature change, we can't leave it in the squads.
I was happy to hear the price, because I know not too long ago the price had been shooting up into the hundreds of dollars, and now it must have come down.
Right.
Funny, after somebody went to jail.
There you go.
It came down. Thank you, gentlemen.
Question for Assistant Chief and Fire Chief. What role, if any, did our units, our services have in the mass car accident on I-39 over the weekend? I would imagine that was more of an EMS response for us, and certainly police move into some type of support role for the sheriff, but I'll let you speak for that. Bob, you go first.
That's Plover ambulance area was dispatched. When they went en route, they requested Medic 2 out of Station 2. Medic 2 and Car 5 was dispatched. And then Assistant Chief Gemza went when he heard the page, that it was possibly a 20-car accident. And then they requested 2 more additional ambulances from Stevens Point. As they got on the scene, they were canceled. I know 1 ambulance transported 4. I'm not sure what the other ambulance transported. Car 5 was down there to assist with triage and setting up transport and treatment of the patients with Plover's Incident Command.
Tom, I can't imagine we had any real role there from law enforcement, though, did we?
Yes, we did. We request to assist, but it was indirect, helping with calls.
Okay. And that would be in our primary service area?
Say that again?
And the assist to the sheriff's department would be primarily basically going to a sheriff's call that they're unable to respond to because they're at the traffic accident. That's what you're telling us, right?
Yes, that assisting with traffic control also. There was obviously some, we didn't assist directly at the scene.
Okay. Are there other questions for either one of the assistant chief, Chief Finn, from any commissioners, Commissioner Moore, Commissioner Kersley? Joseph, you've been uncharacteristically quiet today.
I'm being a good listener today.
Since when?
All right. Are there any other questions for Assistant Chief Center on the police report? And I would echo comments made by several of my colleagues here that the format is far more appreciated, far more informative. Let's continue. Well done, Leanne.
That was Tom, actually.
All right. Well done, Tom. Thank you.
I got to change the way I do reports.
All right, I will make a motion to approve the police chief's report submitted by Assistant Chief Center. Is there a second?
Kershling, second.
Second by Commissioner Kershling. All in favor of accepting the report, placing it on file, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Both say no. Motion carries. Commissioners, we are adjourned. Thank you for your time today.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.